Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely high-stakes medical scenario, one that demands absolute precision when the pressure is on. We're talking about unanticipated difficult airway management. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack the newly updated All India Difficult Airway Association, or AIDAA, 2025 guidelines. And the big goal here? We want to help shift your airway management mindset from a state of chaotic crisis right into a state of structured, totally dialed-in control.
All right, let's kick things off with a pretty sobering fact from the NAP4 audit. 40%. That is the chunk of major airway complications where human factors are a significant contributing cause. We aren't just talking about a piece of missing equipment or some tricky patient anatomy. We're talking about delayed decision-making, poor communication, and just severe cognitive overload. It really proves that to save lives, we've got to manage the humans in the room just as effectively as the airway itself.
And when those human factors fail, you get this terrifying sequence known as the airway disaster chain. It's essentially a worst-case domino effect. A single failed intubation attempt doesn't just happen in isolation, right? It cascades. One failed attempt leads to delays while people scramble for gear. That delay leads to dangerous oxygen desaturation. And that desaturation, it triggers sheer panic, a total loss of focus, spiraling into severe hypoxia, and eventually cardiac arrest. It's a brutal chain reaction of entirely preventable events. The whole point of the AIDAA 2025 framework is to hand you the tools to break those links before the chain ever finishes. So, to break that chain, we're going to follow a logical roadmap today. We'll start by looking at the 2025 paradigm shift, and then dive deep into the three main pillars: prepare, call early, and document. Starting off with Section 1, the 2025 paradigm shift. Let's look at how our fundamental approach to these emergencies has actually changed.
It's really wild to look at the philosophical leap from the 2016 guidelines compared to the new 2025 recommendations. Back in 2016, airway management was mostly taught as a linear path. You try one thing, if it fails, you move to the next, with a massive focus on getting a tracheal cube and throwing out a pretty generic plea for help when things got scary. The 2025 guidelines, they completely overhaul that. We're moving to a circular, interchangeable rescue model. Instead of a vague shout for help, we're using a highly specific emergency code. And most importantly, there's a huge new emphasis on actually mitigating those human errors we just talked about.
If you take away just one concept from this explainer today, let it be this core philosophy: oxygenation over intubation. It is a mantra every single practitioner needs to internalize. Airway rescue is not some rigid hierarchy where getting a tracheal tube is the ultimate prize. The absolute top priority must always be effective ventilation and oxygenation to keep that patient safe and their brain perfused. Whether you do that with a face mask, a supraglottic airway, or a tube, doesn't matter. The priority is the oxygen.
Now, to actually make that oxygenation over intubation philosophy work in the real world, the guidelines rely on three highly structured pillars: prepare, call early, and document. Let's break down exactly how each of these functions when the heat is on.
Moving right into Pillar 1, prepare. Let's talk physical readiness and the Difficult Airway Cart.
Enter the standardized Difficult Airway Cart, or DAC. Having one of these drastically cuts down a team's cognitive load. I mean, think about it. When adrenaline is absolutely pumping, you literally do not have the mental bandwidth to try and remember which drawer holds the scalpel. The DAC keeps equipment uniformly organized across all operating rooms. It's totally portable, so it rolls right to the patient, and it's strictly checked daily. That way, you're never left helplessly digging for tools during a life-or-death moment.
And the cart isn't just a random junk drawer of gear either. It's logically modular. It's generally divided into 4 sequential compartments that map exactly to the steps of airway rescue. Top drawer, your continuous mask ventilation and oxygenation gear. Second drawer down, tracheal intubation aids, so things like video laryngoscopes and bougies. Third drawer, supraglottic airways for when intubation fails. And the bottom drawer escalates all the way to emergency surgical cricothyroidotomy kits. The cart physically guides you through the algorithm. It's brilliant.
But look, crises don't only happen in the perfectly controlled bubble of the OR, right? So the guidelines make a really vital distinction between the full comprehensive DAC and a highly portable carry kit. This carry kit is for outside the OR, places like the ICU, general wards, the MRI suite, or during transport. It packs minimal but absolutely essential tools like a portable video laryngoscopy, a bougie, and an emergency surgical set, so you are ready no matter where an airway starts to fail.
All right, on to Pillar 2, call early, which introduces the activation of Code D. The 2025 guidelines formally bring in this absolute game changer of a concept, Code D. Code D replaces those vague, panicked shouts down the hallway with a standardized, hospital-wide alert. When you trigger it, it instantly communicates that you have an unanticipated difficult airway, and it automatically summons a trained airway team and the cart directly to your exact location. It basically turns a disorganized cry for help into a super precise, tactical response.
To really appreciate Code D, just think about the nightmare scenarios without it. Without a designated code, teams suffer from completely ambiguous communication. Nobody knows exactly what's wrong or what to bring. That sparks extreme panic, severely delayed help, missing gear, and crippling cognitive overload for the primary doc, who's trying to manage a failing airway, direct nurses, and figure out who is calling for backup all at the same time. Code D just instantly wipes out that administrative burden.
And here's the thing. Timing is absolutely everything. This is a massive shift in practice. You have to trigger Code D at the very first sign of difficulty. Do not wait. You deliberately act way before the patient reaches dangerous desaturation or cardiac arrest. That old-school mindset of "let me just try one more time" is exactly what builds that disaster chain we talked about earlier. Call early. Get the team moving toward you. You can always stand them down if you get the tube on the next try.
Because remember this critical physiological fact: ventilation fails before oxygenation fails. By the time that oxygen saturation monitor starts beeping and the numbers are dropping rapidly, you are already deep into a crisis. You cannot wait for severe, irreversible hypoxia before calling for backup or moving to a surgical airway. Recognizing that you are failing to ventilate is your trigger to act right then and there.
Which brings us to our third and final pillar, document, and creating an institutional record with the Airway Alert Card. The new guidelines actually mandate issuing a formal Airway Alert Card. And guys, this is way more than just checking a box on some paperwork. It serves 4 massive purposes. It ensures the specific anatomical details of that difficult airway are permanently recorded. It formally informs the patient and their family so they know the risks for future surgeries. It creates a permanent institutional record, and it allows the hospital to audit the event later so they can actually improve safety protocols down the line.
The big takeaway for this pillar is document today, safe tomorrow. Crisis documentation isn't just some tedious chore you do at the end of an exhausting shift. It is a vital, life-saving communication tool aimed right at that patient's next anesthesiologist. By writing down exactly what went wrong and exactly what techniques finally worked, you're literally handing the next medical team a custom blueprint to keep that patient alive.
Put it all together, the cart, the early code, the alert card, and you get the AIDAA 2025 algorithm. It acts as an incredibly pragmatic framework. It's totally oxygenation-centric. You continuously reassess and freely jump between face mask, supraglottic airway, and tracheal tube, keeping a hawk's eye on time and oxygen saturation. It forces us to shatter that disaster chain through flexible, interchangeable rescue strategies.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative question, one that applies directly to your shift tomorrow. Think about it. If a catastrophic, unanticipated airway emergency happens in your unit today, right now, are your systems honestly structured to turn that panic into standardized control? Is your cart ready? Does everyone know what Code D means? Knowledge is only power if you've prepared and practiced it. I highly encourage you to dive into the full AIDAA 2025 guidelines to make sure your team is ready. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.